as we have a chance to do our earnings call lab where we're going to look at Airbnb. Very unique model, very unique business as we think about this direct to provider experience as we think about an Airbnb model. My name is Brent. Looking forward to spending some time with you today. As Bailey described, there's a couple tools that we're going to be using today, so I'll make sure you're comfortable. Let me start with a poll question. I got a quick poll question. So my question is this the first time you've had a chance to join us for this webinar? These webinars happen once a month, so you should see that on your screen. Of course, make sure you submit. Once you select, you've got to then submit. That comes into my polling system. But we do these earnings calls every single month. It's a chance. There's kind of two purposes. Number one is for anybody who has gone through our Building Business Acumen learning experience that we provide for 34 of the Fortune 50, many of the Fortune 500 companies. It's a continued learning experience. We recognize that coming to a business acumen course is a great boot camp, kind of a foundational thing, but how do I continue to take those tools and apply them as I move forward? If you're a participant who's been part of one of our courses, I can't think of a better way to continue to build your understanding of business and financial acumen than once a month to come back and practice using the tools. So every month we have a chance to do that. In addition to that, anybody who has any interest in learning about business or financial acumen, it's a great starting point. The ability to understand how to listen to an earnings call. How do I assess what my company's talking about? What's the strategic focus? Also, what are the kind of key financial metrics? But most importantly, how can I impact it within my role? Now, if you're saying, wait, Brent, I'm with a privately held, what's the value to me? Well, if you're a privately held company, just having a better understanding of key metrics and measures, how strategy impacts a business. If you happen to be with a privately held and you're selling into a publicly traded company, if I'm in sales and I'm selling into a publicly traded company, boy, these earnings calls are golden, an opportunity to assess what are they talking about? What's their strategy? And how can our products or services really drive towards my customer success? It's what I call a hidden gem. There's a lot of information out there, but a lot of people don't use those. So hopefully today I'll inspire you enough to take the tool that we're going to give you at the end of this course. And for the next 2 or 3 quarters, either look at your company, look at a company you might sell in, maybe a company you compete against that's publicly traded, and or just look at a company you may want to invest in. You want to know something more about it. Well, it looks like as I look at our results here, that about 50% of it's your first time. So welcome, all those that have just joined us. It looks like the rest of us, we've been here more than once, so excited to have you come back. By the way, just because you've gone through the course as an individual leader, or feel free to invite any of your colleagues, your peers, or direct reports. This is a great way to help build their capabilities around business and financial acumen as well. Well, thank you. Looks like we're comfortable with the poll question. Let's go ahead and jump into the chat box as Bailey described. Make sure it's open, and in the little to box, it should say to everyone. That's why we'll be able to see your communication. Everybody will be able to do that. Of course, you can private message our host if you need help on any ways. But here's what I want to ask as we get going today. Just quickly in the chat box, where are you calling in from? What is it? Give us a city, a state, a country, a province, depending upon where you're located. Where are you calling in from today? So my colleagues and us, our headquarters are in Salt Lake City, about an hour south of Salt Lake City, in a place called Orem, Utah, just south of the Mount Timpanogos. It's most people don't know outside of the state Mount Timpanogos, but many people happen to know the Sundance Film Festival. The north side of that Mount Timpanogos, where some Sundance ski resort is. Of course, that's where that great film experience happened, which was just a couple of weeks ago here. We had people from all over the world coming to little old Utah to look at films. So looks like we got people all throughout the United States. Excellent. I got some international. Oh, there you go. Mexico City. Welcome, welcome. Buenos dias. Excellent. So, boy, I don't have any Europes yet. I'm not seeing here. Hopefully we have some international colleagues. Obviously these get recorded and it might be late in the day for some people. So hopefully get access. Well, folks, that's how we'll communicate today. If you have questions, the hard questions, my colleagues will answer. The easy questions I will answer. Let's get going here as we jump into our program today. Let me jump back to my slide deck and let's go ahead and start in as we talk about these business financial acumen. So you're coming to a program called an earnings call lab. We're going to learn how to listen to an earnings call. How do I assess both the strategic focus, make sense of it, as well as be able to assess the financial performance with the real goal in mind. What am I going to do about it? If it's my own company, I want to be able to assess what our strategic focus is, what our key metrics are, and then how do I impact those? If it's a company I'm competing against or I'm selling into, being able to understand my external customers, whether it be the company I'm selling into or maybe a competitor, how to differentiate ourselves. At the end of these conversations, at the end of these calls, the outcome should be an action plan. What am I going to do differently based upon what I've learned? Now, it may just confirm the behaviors you're doing, so you just want to double down on the key strategies and focus that you're focused on, or it may be that there's significant adaptations you want to make based upon what's going on in your company. So here's my question as we get going today. Got a quick poll question again. When's the last time you listened to an earnings call? You're coming to this experience where you get a chance to learn how to listen to them. Well, when's the last time you listened to one? Actually this year, right now we're in the heart of earnings call season. We're mid-February. So basically starting late to mid-January through March 1st, companies, that's typical season for a year-end 2024 earnings calls. So they happen on a quarterly basis. And basically, any publicly traded company that works on a calendar year is their fiscal year, meaning January through December. They have to report to the SEC by March 1st. So most companies are right now getting all that information. They've either already submitted it in the process of submitting, and they're going to take the opportunity to have these calls. They happen on a quarterly basis. Basically, think of the end of the quarter, about a month to a month and a half after the end of the quarter is when you'll start to hear these calls. So this call actually happened on February 13th. So about a week ago or so, this call happened here at Airbnb. They've only been public just for a couple of years. So they're pretty new into this. But as we look at everybody, so excellent. Looks like a lot of us have. We have 14% of you never have had a chance to listen. Well, I'm excited that you've joined us. And my hope today is to inspire you enough that you say, you know what? I want to give this a try. I'm going to try and think like a CEO, to learn as much as I can about a business to help me make better decisions. Well, as you think about these earnings calls that happen on a quarterly basis, communicating to the market, communicating to investors, communicating to your employees. What's interesting about these calls is that even with these calls, about 95% of employees don't understand company strategies. This comes from a Harvard business study. From our research here at Acumen Learning, 90% of employees don't understand their company's important business metrics. Imagine you're the CEO of a large $9.9 billion in revenue. Can you believe that? 9.9, almost $10 billion of revenue this Airbnb is generating. Now remember, they don't get all the fees. When you go stay at a location, remember the owner of that's making most of the money. In fact, they get 10% commission plus a little 3% service fee. And then there's some add-ons that they can get, but they're making $9.9 billion just off of a 10% commission plus 3% service fee, and then a few other things that they do. Pretty impressive company. Well, here you have Brian Chesky, I think is how you pronounce it. He's a co-founder and CEO of Airbnb. Started, they describe it as born in 2007 when two hosts welcomed three guests to their home in San Francisco. Actually became a company in 2008. Went public in 2022, if I remember correctly. So it's only been public the last couple of years. In fact, it's only been profitable the last couple of years as you look at their growth together. Well, as of this time, they've got 5 million hosts. Now, what is a host? Anybody who owns a location and puts it into their system and rents it out, they're considered a host. Now, what they call like individual hosts, but then there's actually groups of hosts where people have businesses where they have multiple locations and they use this platform to run their business. Very interesting model. 1.5 billion guests arrived in over 1,000 cities or towns as part of their services. They're in almost every country and region across the globe. They have 6,907 employees as of the end of last year. Kind of an interesting situation. Looks like some people are having audio dropping in and out. It looks like others are seeing it. So hopefully we're okay. If you're having problems, just reach out, private message one of our hosts. Maybe they can help us here. So big player, 9.9 billion, 5 million hosts. 1.5 billion guests arrived in over 100,000 cities, 6,900 employees. Well, what is it you think about being in that position? Recognize 95% of employees may or may not, maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower, don't understand your key strategies. 90% of your employees don't understand key metrics as measured. Well, what is it you want your employees to know as a CEO? What is it you want your customers to know? And in their language, what is it you want your host to know? Might be another one. What do you want your shareholders and partners / hosts to know? Well, that's what these earnings calls are about. These earnings calls are a great opportunity where leaders of a company get a chance to speak to analysts, to speak to investors, to speak to their employees, to speak to the whole market, to speak to my hosts here at Airbnb. Well, how do we make sense of these? Here's my guarantee to you. We here at Acumen Learning, like I said, we work with 34 of the Fortune 50, many of the Fortune 500. All we do is focus on how do we help employees understand how their company makes money, how decisions are made around the money-making process, but most importantly, what can they do individually to drive results? What we find is senior leaders are doing everything they can to squeeze a dollar of the financial statement. But think about it. In your company, if you're publicly traded or any company, who really impacts the day-to-day success of your business? In most cases, it's not the CEO, it's not the CFO, it's not the chief HR or chief revenue officer, it's the employees. What we find working with many great companies that employees are functionally brilliant. You know more about your role than I would ever understand about your role. That being said, we tend to kind of go through our career with blinders on. I'm very focused. I'm an HR leader. I'm an operations leader. I'm a marketing leader, right? I'm very focused on that. Well, what these earnings calls are about and the tools and resources I'm going to provide for you today is about stepping back for a moment. Let's get a big picture perspective. Let's see what the CEOs talking about, CFOs are talking about. What are the key strategic objectives? What are the key metrics that I can keep score? I can tell if we're getting better or worse as a company. And then with that information, go back to your functional expertise. Say, what is it I can do as an HR leader? What is it I can do as a marketing leader? What is it I can do as an operational leader? That's what these types of calls will do. As you think about building your credibility, building your career, and building your company, I can't think of a better thing to be doing. To take 1 hour a quarter to go through these tools and assess the strategic focus, assess your financial performance, and then with your expertise, go back and execute. This is where you begin to think like a CEO. Think like she would think as she focuses on driving profitability, driving cash flow, being able to understand the leader's focus, and then with your expertise, help us make the right decisions. Well, folks, my guarantee to you is if you can take this tool and use it 2 to 3 quarters consecutive on your own company, on a company you sell into, on a company you compete against that's publicly held, or just any company you're interested in from an investment perspective, my guarantee is right here, you will build your credibility, you will build your career, and you'll absolutely build your company. The CEOs of the world, the CFOs of the world did not start in those leadership roles. They started in operations. They started in marketing. They started in HR. And at some point in their period, he or she made the decision, I'm going to go beyond just my functional expertise, and I'm going to understand business. That's what this tool will allow you to do. So I'm going to give you a 3-step process, and I'm going to give you 2 tools. And the goal is to help you get confident enough to go ahead and try this within your organization. So here's the 3-step process. 3 steps. You got to prepare for these. You got to analyze them. You got to apply it. This one right here to me is the most important. So I'll make sure to highlight that. Here's the major process. This is where the work is going to happen. So let's jump in the first part of it. Now, this is the tool. You're going to get it. So don't worry, you don't have to take a bunch of notes or screenshots. You'll get it at the end of the course. So that's available to you. As you look at these calls, let me give you just the basics 101. There's 14% of you who've never been on a call. There's typically 2 parts to these calls. The first part is what we call the prepared remarks. This is where the CEO, the CFO, maybe an investor relations person, maybe a senior operations leader, but it's the C-suite of the organization. They come and they share their pitch. Now, again, this is not regulated. They're not required to do these earnings calls. They are required on an annual basis to submit what's called the 10K. Don't get too caught up about the title. All it refers to is a document they have to fill out. If it's quarterly, they call it a 10Q. That's for a U.S.-based company trade on a U.S. exchange. Now, there's other ones. If you come to our class, we'll give you other forms they fill out, but they're all the same idea. That's regulated. What they say in there, it gets audited. They're looking at the regulations around what they're saying, what they're not saying. Their lawyers are looking at. These calls, on the other hand, is basically, in fact, they start off saying, look, whatever we say today, it may change. We're not required to update you on it. They kind of give that disclaimer as they kick these off. So in that first 15 to 30 minutes, they're going to give their prepared remarks. And you want to think of this as it's going to be a kind of where we thought we'd be, where we currently are, where we're going. They're going to communicate how well we perform. Even if they're struggling, they'll talk about, well, we restructured, we changed these things. There's a bit of a marketing piece as well as kind of the performance of the organization. Then the second part of this call is where analysts get a chance. Now, these analysts work for large investment firms like Citigroup or Barclays, Wells Fargo, these large financial institutions. And their whole goal is to get as much information as they can so they can make a recommendation to their investors. Now, there's actually 5 recommendations, but just to simplify, the 3 most kind of broad recommendations are buy, hold, or sell. So they're trying to get as much information to make that recommendation for their group. That's the Q&A, where analysts get a chance to ask those questions. These typically last for about 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes is our most common. Some can go longer, some can go a little shorter. Most common is about 1 hour. So in the prepare phase, what 3 things do you need to do? The first thing you've got to do is you've got to locate the call itself. Now, if you've been on my call before, you'll remember this great website. You may have heard of it. It's called Google. That's the easiest way. Now, you can go to their website. You can go to investor relations and try and find stuff. But the easiest thing to do is type in the company. I want Airbnb. Now, it's going to try and get me to their tool, right, to reserve a location. All I have to add is investor relation or earnings call or transcripts. Any of that type of stuff is going to get us there. So it's already guessing. There we are. I've got it. It's taking me right to, I don't have to navigate. I jump right in. Now I can look at financials, press release. I just go to the main page. Here's the main page. There's a little marketing piece. Does not look very cozy, a place to go stay. And right here, you've got their quarterly information. Now, what I love about their website, sorry, I'm looking a little left. I've got another computer here. Press release. Press release is going to give you a nice overview of what happened in the quarter. If you want just a quick summary, this is a nice little overview. Theirs isn't very good. They're not giving you much there. They're going to give a shareholder letter. Now, they do this robust shareholder. This is where the detail is going to be. It's 34 pages. It's kind of like part of their annual report type document. So a lot of information there, probably more than you would necessarily need, but that's available to you. What you're doing, if it's prior to the call, you're going to try and register for the call itself, okay? So prior to the call, you'll come to a page like this. You hit register for the call, and it's going to have you log in. You put your information in. Don't worry, they don't sell your information. And then it actually gives you a link to the call. So prior to the call, you just register for it, gives you a link, and then on the call, you can go listen to it. Now, once the calls actually happen, what you'll find is you can actually access, let me jump back here, the actual recording of the call is available opportunity. Now, if I go back in there, I'd get the recording. It's in there. I still have to register, and I can listen to the recording. They got a little firewall. They want you to register before you do that. Here's the transcript, word for word, what they communicate on the call. I love these. It's a nice overview of what happened in the call. Here's every single question that was asked, a nice resource. And then this is the actual filing, what they submitted to the Security Exchange Commission. So folks, that's how you access it. It's a quick Google search. Now, sometimes they'll also have like a presentation. I love the presentations because it gives you a lot of detail and a slide or two. But that's the first thing. You got to locate prior to the call, get registered so you can listen to it. If it's after the call, look for a transcript, go get the recording, etc. The next step of preparation is to review your prior quarter information. Now, if it's your first time, you won't have prior quarters. Well, you can also jump right back to that website, by the way. And if you go back to their website, you can actually go look at prior calls. So all quarterly results. You can go prior quarters here. So if I want to go to Q3 of last year, here's a press release, shareholder letter, etc. You're going all the way back. Actually, excuse me. They've only been profitable since 2022. They actually went public in 20. Sorry, so Q4 of 20 is when they first went public. But you review your notes. So if I want to do a quick review of what happened prior quarters, it's all available to me right there. The last thing that I would recommend that you could do is you can go back and, let me get the right icon here. Here we go. I can review the notes from prior calls as meet with your team. Get with your team and kind of go through this. If you're a manager, if you want to see one thing that can increase the engagement of your employees beyond your coaching, your feedback, performance plan, all that type of stuff. I'll tell you, help your employees understand your business better. Help them understand how do they impact that business. So helping them learn how to listen to an earnings call is a great way to increase their gain. Imagine if your core team comes together and every quarter you listen to the call as a team. You take 20 minutes and you say, okay, based upon the call, what's the top 2 or 3 things we as a group should do to drive towards our corporate results? Imagine how that would build your credibility as a leader, under aligning your decision-making with what the company's doing. How will that build your career as well as your employees' career and build the company as a whole? Absolutely valuable. Highly recommend do this with somebody else. Now, if you're an individual contributor, just get with a colleague, get with a friend, get with your significant other. It's a great way to kind of learn together about the companies you're working for, you're selling into, competing against, or potentially a company you want to invest in. Folks, that's the first stage. Now, the meat of the tool is the analyze phase. Before we jump into, I need some help with my colleagues who've gone through our course. So open up your chat box. Let's look. We're going to review a simple framework. Now, think of this as a mental model, a simple way to assess what's being communicated in an earnings call. It's called the 5 business drivers. It's our model that we promote, we communicate to our customers. Basically, we would suggest you there's 5 fundamental drivers every company focuses on. Whether you're a $9.9 billion Airbnb or a small mom and pop shop, there's 5 fundamental drivers every company needs to focus on. The first one is cash. Now, as you think about the importance of cash, give me cash is blank. Fill it out. Put it in the chat box. If you're going to define what is cash for a business, a lot of times it's king, it's royalty. Yeah, I love that. Fuel. It's the lifeblood of a business. Absolutely. Cash is vitally important. That being said, most people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go generate more cash today. We often spend a lot more time focused on profitability. But if a company's struggling with cash, you're going to see cash be a core focus of what they're doing. Now, of course, for Airbnb, they weren't profitable until 2022. That being said, they were actually generating cash. Well, if they finally are now profitable, plus they're generating a significant amount of cash. So now investors are saying, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, we're getting some of that back to investors. We're buying back shares of stock. That's a big initiative for them. In addition, oh, there's a nice thumbs up for you. As well as they are taking that money and investing beyond the core, other opportunities. If I have cash, more than I need to run my core business, what else can I do with that cash? Get it back to my investors, strengthen my financial position by paying down debt, and or invest in other opportunities. They're really focused on that. So the second driver we talk about in our 5-driver model is the profitability. Now, this is the one we all hear about. We talk about it, profitability. Every quarter, the executives are asked about their revenue generation, their profitability metrics, whether that's gross profit, operating profit, net profit, sometimes EBIT or EBITDA. Now, there's 2 levers that drive profitability that every single one of us can do to impact profit. If you want to go profit in your business, what do you have to do? Increase one item or decrease the other? Do you remember from the course? 2 things you can do to drive profitability. Increase there you go, my revenue or sales, same thing, or I reduce my costs. Those are 2 fundamental levers. Now, I'm sure this is a new idea for us, right? No, I'm being sarcastic. How many have ever heard an executive say, reduce costs, reduce costs, reduce costs? Has significant impact on the bottom line. That being said, if that's all you focus on, you're gonna eventually impact quality and sustainability of business. So you got to drive profitability while managing your costs. Now, if I wanted to see what was going on in profitability in a business, I'd look at their income statement. I want to see what's going on in cash of a business. I'd see their cash flow statement. Assets is anything you own or control which has value. Now, think about Airbnb's model. What do they own or control that has value? Put it in the chat box. This is a unique model, very different than the Marriotts, the Hiltons of the world, right? What is it they have? Yes, Leo, they have a brand. What else do they have, guys? What's their assets? Name. There you go. Algorithms, systems for booking. Paul's really highlighting. They've got a technology. For those of you that joined us a few weeks ago, we did Visa, or a few months ago, we did Visa. Visa connects the seller to a buyer and provides that transaction and takes 2.5%. If you look at Airbnb, there's a very similar model here. They're connecting. They don't own a bunch of locations. It's a tool. It's a technology. It's an algorithm. It's IT. Yeah, so intellectual property. It is technology, patents, etc. But their system of connecting 5 million hosts with last year 1.5 million stays how do I make those? Actually, it wasn't stays. There's 1.5 million people use their service. They may have stayed 1 day. They may have stayed 20 days. That's their big business. So on their balance sheet, you don't have a bunch of infrastructure like a Marriott where you have a bunch of hotels. The hotel owners are you. It's me. It's individuals. It's groups, right? So their big thing is their technology is where they're making their money. So what do they have in control? They have a reputation, a brand, a loyalty. They have all sorts of service, security benefits. They have reviews. They have, the ability for you to see what's the right price in a market, right? There was one period of time, for example, Airbnb started to increase price, but they added to a tool that showed you prices around there, which allowed a host to know what's the right pricing. You don't want to overprice your location. You want to be the right balance for the users, right? So anyways, anything they own or control which has value. If you want to see what a company has, jump to their balance sheet. You'll see the things they own or control which has value. You look at their balance sheet, they have cash. They have goodwill from acquisitions. They don't have a big property, plant, and equipment. Now they have 6,900 employees, so they're going to have some potential office space, leasing, those types of things. But really, it's their technology is what they have. The growth is then what investors expect, what's the market expects, people are what makes it happen. So with that simple 5-driver framework, I want you to think of that as a simple way to listen and understand what an executive is communicating. Whether it be their earnings call, whether it be an email they're sending to you, how do I assess what they're talking about? This simple mental model of 5 drivers: cash, profit, asset, growth, and people. So the first tool kind of plays on that, using this 5-driver model as a simple framework to assess the strategic focus of a company. Here's how it works. Any call you're listening to, so if I'm actually listening to the call itself, I'd grab a piece of paper and I just start putting slash marks. Every time they talk about cash, I'm going to put a little slash mark. Every time it's profit, assets, growth, people, I'm putting slash marks. I can do it right on the sheet. This is part of the tool, right? Do something like that. Or if I've already listened to the call, what I do is I just download the document and I just start writing it all over their transcript. I can mark it up so I get clear on what it is. Once you've done that, so all you're doing is you're listening to the call with the framework, or are they talking about cash, profit, asset, growth, or people? Then at the end of the call, you compile those all up. You're going to get some numbers here. Maybe you got 10 up here. You got 22 or 32 down here, etc. Then you answer these 4 simple questions. Which business driver seems to get the most attention and why? What are the 2 or 3 main points the executive is trying to make? What's the goals, trends, or objectives going forward? And then finally, because it's an earnings call, what's the questions or concerns the analysts? What did they focus on? Where are they aligned, or where are they asking questions? Now, don't worry. If you haven't been through my class, I give you a quick definition. I also give you what I call trigger words or examples. With AI today, you can actually even plug these examples in and say, how often does it talk? Basically, pull the transcript, say, how often did the executive talk about these types of terms? And it'll help you kind of calculate that. But it's a simple way to access what are they focused on, then answer those 4 questions. Folks, that's the tool. So here's what I want to do. I've got some quotes. This first one comes from their CEO, Brian Chesky. Here's what I want you to do. Open your chat box. I'm going to read it. I just want you to put in the chat box, which of these 5 drivers are you hearing communicated as I go through it? Just put them in the chat box, okay? So here we go. We had 999 million nights in experience booked in Q4, making our highest 4th quarter ever. Which drivers with that sentence would you hear communicating? Now, don't say them specifically, but what drivers might you ascertain based upon that? Yeah, so growth, highest ever. That's going to speak to growth for sure. 99 nights. Now, what's the outcome? Well, it's going to be revenue coming in. Eventually, it's going to be cash. You may even have a little people. Those 99 million nights, those are customers going out and actually spending money within their system. So you could even have a people driver there. Revenue of 2.2 billion grew 70% year over year. This is just in Q4. Net loss was 349 million, but when excluding non-recurring tax items, adjusted net income was 489 million, representing an adjusted net income margin of 22%. What driver? Absolutely. I hear revenue. I hear net income, net profit, EBITDA, earnings per share. It's all going to be profitability. Now, remember, once I generate profit, eventually it becomes cash. So sometimes that gets a little confusing. There's not an exact science, meaning if you and I were to look at our slash marks, we're not going to have the exact same number. That being said, we do about 1,100 of these sessions a year with companies from all different industries. And what we find is the top 2 or 3 drivers will always go to the top. So yes, profitability for sure. Growth is in there. Some good numbers there. Let's look at the next sentence here. For the full year, our free cash flow, okay, what driver are we talking about there? Was $3.8 billion, our highest ever. So you got cash and potentially highest ever. What driver? Growth. There you go. Because of our strong cash flow, again, cash and balance sheet, what's on the balance sheet? My assets. We purchased $2.25 billion of our shares. Now, what is a driver? If I buy back shares, that's going to take cash to buy them back. Who benefits from stock buybacks? What driver benefits? The shareholders do, don't they? So people, thank you, Lori. Absolutely, people's going to be benefited. And I'm excited to announce today our board of directors approved a new share repurchase authorization up to $6 billion of buybacks on their common stock. Continued cash usage, continue to strengthen their financial position, as well as a benefit to their shareholders. Well, folks, that was their CEO's communication. Now, if you listen to this letter, they've got two additional people that were on the call. One is, let me get their names again. One used to be their CFO, David Stevenson. David Stevenson has shifted roles. He's now become the Chief Business Officer, Head of Employee Experience. He's really focused on the growth engine of the company. And then Ellie Mertz, who was the Vice President of Finance, has now become the CFO. They did not have prepared remarks. Well, I should say that. David, for like 10 sentences, said, I'm excited in my new role, looking forward to growth, et cetera, but not a whole lot of communication. So I don't have that one there. What I do have is from an analyst. So not only do you have their prepared remarks, but you also have analyst questions. This is Ronald Josie from Citigroup. I'm not going to read it. You just kind of review it and just put in my chat box. What drivers was this analyst focused on? Which of the 5 drivers did you see them communicating? So just kind of read through it. Let's practice doing this. Then we'll move on to the next assessment. So John is seeing growth. Paul's seeing growth as well. Let me see if I can find growth. Expanding the core. Yeah, expanding suggests growth. Yeah, the expanding, definitely growth. Anything else? Where would you put this kind of AI initiative they're looking at? Alex kind of describes assets. Yeah, they actually made an acquisition. They acquired another company, an AI company. That's a big part of their communication. Beyond their core, what other services can they provide? So they're asking, this was the acquisition. It's Game Planner AI was an acquisition that they made. And so a new asset, new opportunity, new growth potential for them for sure. And then, of course, growth in different regions of the world, expansion, growth is definitely going to be there. Well, folks, that's how it works. Now, if we had a full hour, we could go through the whole call. Actually, their prepared remarks was only about 15 minutes. You could get through it pretty quickly. We don't have time to do that. So once you're done, if you were to do this, your document may look something like this. Kind of you reviewed it. Often I like to break up prepared remarks versus analysts. So you might have something that looks like this as you're done. Well, once you're done with that, you look and say, so what kind of stood out? Well, obviously growth was a big one. Asset was a big one. Profit was a big one. Well, then you go through and you start answering those 4 questions. So here's what I want to do. I've done it from my perspective. If you've done it, add some insights into the chat box. But let's jump in. So what did I find? Well, which drivers seemed to get the most attention? It was growth, for sure. A lot of emphasis on growth. Of course, this is the second year they've been profitable. Their cash flow was very significant. I think it was around $3 billion of cash flow generation, which was huge numbers for them. In fact, the number was $3.8 billion of cash generation. Significant cash flow. Well, not only was growth strong throughout the year, but they emphasized Q4, which is a big quarter for them. Think of the holiday where people travel. They had 99 million nights and experiences booked. 99 million. Think about how many days in Q4. There's 90 days in Q4. They had 99 million nights and experiences booked. Strong supply growth. Now, what's that? They're trying to balance between just the interface, but also getting more hosts, which gives them more supply that they can sell. So growth and active listings exceeded 7.7 million. So they have 5 million hosts, but some hosts will have more than one listing. Double-digit growth across the region, growing nights and experience booked. So year over year, the full year, they've increased both nights and experiences around 12% year over year growth for them. So huge growth perspective. And this was part of their report that they share, the shareholder letter. A couple key metrics they talk about: gross bookings, night and experience booked. Here's some of the numbers. You see growth all across. This is just in Q4 growth, but then year over year growth, significant growth in their business model. Basically, you see during COVID in 2020, you saw a real pullback on that. But starting in 2022, you see huge ranch up. 2021 was an okay time for them, but 2020, everybody decided, hey, we're kind of past COVID a little bit, even though we weren't quite. But we had the vaccination, people are vaccinated, travel starts to open up. Everybody wanted to go back to travel. So you see their Q1 of last year, or 2022, was huge growth for them. So significant growth across their key metrics. Beyond just growing their core, though, was this idea of emphasizing expand beyond their core. So their core, of course, is their travel experience, right? Locations, they even have, not only can you get a place to stay, but they have experiences they've added through Airbnb. Some of you may have used that, where you can book a location, but you can also book experience, kind of like a travel agency, right? You book the flight, you book the hotel, and then you can actually book some of the excursion type stuff. They've started to do some of that type of stuff. But in addition to that, they're looking at whole other business models and this AI opportunity. They're not trying to build an AI like ChatGPT or Google's. They just changed their, instead of Bard, I think it's called Gemini. They see that as the infrastructure. What they're going to do is how you use that. How can I use AI to help from a learning and travel experience and even potentially other products? So they talk about expanding outside their core, but also expanding the international market. And then this acquisition, signals the intention to become a leader in AI-powered travel experiences. How do we help people? I want to go have this type of experience in KL, for example. I'm going to KL for work, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I want to know it, and that knows enough about me. It's an AI that tells me, here's what you would want to do. That type of learning experience using AI to have the best travel experiences. So a big part was growth, of course. So why? Well, they're coming out of COVID, where the COVID years were rough. Prior to 2022, they weren't profitable. So they're really trying to show that, hey, this is a viable business. Now, remember, companies like Amazon weren't profitable for 10 years plus. The fact that they're now profitable and have a good financial model, they want to speak to that and how that builds growth for their market. So what are their 2 or 3 main points, the executives? Well, of course, the first one is strong performance, financial health. The fact they generate $3.4 billion, $2.3 billion in free cash flow. Their financial position on their balance sheet, very strong, really speaking to the health of the business. The additional thing, they have kind of these 3 strategic priorities. I want to highlight them because that was a core of his messaging. The first is this idea of making hosting mainstream. Now, what does that mean? Well, actually, I'd be interested in this. I should have done a poll question. In the chat box, anybody who uses as a host for Airbnb, put it on the chat box. There's a free marketing for you. In the chat box, how many of you actually use that as a hosting? They want that to be mainstream. As much mainstream as us using Airbnb for travel, how many of us actually have taken the opportunity to put our assets, a home, a rental location, to be able to do that? They want that. One of their key strategic priorities is to make hosting mainstream. Now, many of us, this is incredibly interesting to me as a little bit more seasoned individual. How many of you would have thought, 15 years ago, you'd get out of an airport and you jump in some stranger's car and get a ride to your hotel? How many of you would have thought, let alone other than a family member, go on some website and reserve a home, a condo, or even just a room in a house? Now, today, that's mainstream. Even us that are a little more seasoned are using those resources. Well, how do we make hosting that same concept? Yes, they got 5 million hosts, but many of us haven't done that. And in the group we have, I got one that said yes, most of us never. But how do they make that mainstream? That's a big emphasis of what they're trying to do. Second, perfecting their core services. All sorts of investments they're trying to do to make that core services as helpful and useful, both for the host, those that are providing the supply, but also for the customer who's going to use that resource. So a lot of investment that they've done over the last couple of years to kind of take advantage of making it better for both groups. For example, on the host cancellations, for some of the tools that they've incorporated, host cancellations are down 36%. What does that do for somebody who's willing to provide that type, put their asset on the market to know that, hey, I'm not going to get as many cancellations. I can count more upon the fact that people are going to use my services. So perfecting their core, both for the host and for the travel individual. Let's see, John says, bed and breakfast in some controlled economies, all pre-world wide web. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there's some areas that are trying to control it. In fact, San Francisco, where they started it, put some rules in initially to kind of prevent some of that. And some locations have done that. So continue to perfect the core. And the last is expanding beyond the core. And that's really where this AI stuff comes in. Acquisition of Game Planner AI in November of this year. Announced the acquisition of Game Planner AI, a stealth AI company. While we are already using AI across the services, including large language model, computer vision models, and machine learning, the Game Planner AI team will focus on accelerating select AI projects and integrating their tools into Airbnb platform. They talk about this Airbnb kind of being predictive about what type of locations based upon kind of like Amazon, right? You buy stuff and at the end it says, well, people have bought that, have also bought this. Similar concept. You've done this, or people in your demographics have stayed at these types of locations. You've stayed at these types of locations. Here's the ones that you would probably prefer. So AI is trying to predict what you would be more comfortable with. So trying to expand that. So those are the three kind of key messages. Strong performance in this overarching three priorities: making hosting mainstream, perfecting the core services, and expanding beyond the core. So question number 3, what are goals and objectives? Well, all sorts of stuff. First ever chief business officer to help them to grow. That's his whole focus. Mr. Stevenson is focused on growth projects, new opportunities for growth. Existing and new business growth. How can we do that? What is our goals there to continue? They've added 430 new technologies to make both the host experience more effective and efficient, more profitable, but also for the customer using the product, have a better experience. Of course, an international expansion with their core, taking their model to different regions. They're all over the world. I mean, I've been all over the world and I've had a chance to use them. They continue to find different regions, different locations to expand their brand and their model. Grow, and then growing beyond the core with their AI is kind of their future focus. So what do the analysts kind of talk about? There's kind of two areas of focus, I thought, as I looked at it. One was on expansion and growth, so questions around that. The other was kind of financial performance as they look to go forward. Again, this is the second year in a row that they've been profitable. So they're very focused on, is this sustainable, or was this kind of benefits of coming out of COVID, et cetera? So, expansion and growth kind of questions. There was underpenetrated markets. So what are you doing in those markets? Cross vertical platforms, meaning how do you tie in your platform with other platforms to provide the best travel experience? Supply and demand dynamics, meaning do you have oversupply in areas? How does that impact the markets? Competition, what's happening with other areas? You're seeing even in the hotel space, they're starting to provide kind of similar markets through some of these Expedia and other locations where they can actually reserve these individual houses, condos, et cetera, through their competition. So it's not just Airbnb and VRBO, but you're seeing other avenues where people can basically rent each other's assets, if that makes sense. And then financial performance, their key profit metric, their expansion around margin, how's that going? And then their headcount as they expand. You think about that, to have 6,900 employees, that's a pretty good, sizable organization. Yeah, you got $9.9 billion of revenue, so that's pretty significant. But are you getting, what is that right headcount? How much expansion do you need to have to kind of maintain the services you're providing? So that was a question. You don't often get those questions, but there's a bit of a question on what's the right amount of growth you want from a headcount. You want to get too ahead of that. And then marketing plans. Great question. Paul's asking, is EBITDA the free cash flow? Often people will describe EBITDA as a form of cash flow. It's basically what they're doing is they're taking your profit, adding back your depreciation and amortization. So it's kind of like a cash flow number. Free cash flow, though, is actually taking your actual cash flow number, which takes into account changes in what's called working capital, your receivables, your payables, and your inventories. That's what cash flow is. So EBITDA doesn't consider that. EBITDA is taking profit and getting a form of cash flow. Cash from operations is the real cash flow number. And then to get to your free cash flow, you take out your capital spend, any sort of investment in capital projects. It's kind of now what's that cash left over that can go back to share. So yes, Paul, EBITDA is kind of a form of a cash flow. They'll often refer to it as that. It's not the actual cash flow the company will talk about, what's called cash from operations, nor is it free cash flow. Those are a little different numbers, but similar concept. Let me know if that answers your question. Well, folks, that's the tool. So what do I know this right now? Growth is huge for them. Profitability, expansion of host, and providing a host experience. I always think of the side that I usually play, which is the user, the consumer side, but they're really emphasized. Think about their suppliers. Their product is their hosts. So a significant focus on the success of their hosts, which of course drives their profitability. So that's a key factor. Second year of profitability, huge cash generation, significant $3.8 billion, almost $3.9 billion of cash generation. That, to Paul's question, is their cash flow. You take out how much they reinvested in new technologies and et cetera. It was, $2.5 billion of free cash flow. That's leftover cash. I can then take that, pay down debt, get money back to investors, et cetera. Very strong performance. Well, let's see if we can see that in the numbers. The next tool I'm going to give you is called the Navigating the Financial. With this tool and any financial information, you can quickly assess the financial performance of the company. For those that have been in our course, you'll remember this tool. It's very simple. Now, don't worry, I'm not trying to make you a CFO, but the basic 5 drivers are right on the left-hand side. Then the most common key metrics. You don't have to have gone through one of our programs. Now, if you've gone through one of our programs, you're going to have a customized one. For example, if you were with me last week, an oil and gas company, you're going to look at stuff like free cash flow. You're going to look at EBITDA as a key profit metric. In the end, the concept is very similar, whether it's a basic company or each industry will have a key metric. You just pull those key metrics. Now, if you're looking at any company, these are the 10 most common metrics companies will track. So if you don't have a specific metric for your company, just use this. So it gives you those key metrics as well as what line items do you need to calculate those to determine performance. In addition, if there's any sort of equation, it gives you the equation you need to access. Now, the genius of this tool is right here, in my opinion. You don't have to have gone through one of our courses. You don't have to be an expert in the financial statements. It's going to tell you where to go to find that information. Now, if you're brand new, there's this great resource called Google, and you don't know what net income is, do a quick Google search. There's plenty of videos. Come to our website. You can go see on our website, and you can actually learn. If you've been through our course, you'll have access to what's called Acumen and Access. acumenandaction.com, where we have little vignettes. Go to our website, our Yahoo website, or not our Yahoo, YouTube website, and you can get little instructions on different terms. What do we mean by these terms? There's all sorts of resources out there. So again, you don't have to be an expert, and you can see what's happening from a profitability perspective, what's happening from a cash generation perspective, et cetera. So that's how it works. It tells you where to go. And if there's any calculation, it gives you the calculation. You go through and do it. So here's what I want to do. We only have about 12 minutes left. We're going to do a few of these together. Then I'll show you the results. We'll kind of assess it. We'll jump to the last part of our process, the apply process, and we'll give you the tool. We'll be done for today. So help me out. Let's look this up here. Let's start with, excellent. There's the glossary of terms. Go there if you want to have any questions about terms. So between that and this tool, even if you haven't been through our class, you're going to be way ahead of the game than most people on understanding these metrics or measures. So let's do the first one. The first one we want to do is we want to find cash and cash equivalent. The line item is the exact same term, no change there. Based on the tool, I want to make sure you understand my tool. In the chat box, what statement do we need to go to find our cash and cash equivalent? Put in my chat box. Please engage with me. This will help you get comfortable around the tool. What statement do I have to go to? Excellent. Balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet. There you go. Now, you don't have it because I didn't have you download it. If you had download it, great. You can go to that Google website, type in their cash flow statement and give it to you. So here we are. Look at it right here. I've got it in front of you. I'm looking for what line item. What did it say? It said cash and cash equivalent, okay? For those who have been in my class, you'll remember that cash and the balance sheet are listed by most liquid, meaning it either is cash or convert to cash down to least liquid. So you're going to find it towards the top. Just look at this. Now, don't be confused in years. They did this a little backwards than the typical accounting. Typically, you have the most recent year on the left because you read left to right, and the prior years to the right. They've got it backwards. But tell me, what was our cash? How much cash did they have on hand as of December 31st, 2023? Put it in my chat box. See if you can read it there. Their cash and cash flow. Sometimes we kind of, in our class, we talk about it's kind of like a savings account. So where a company holds on to cash for future investment, for unexpected expenses, to withstand ups and downs of the market. Absolutely. 6,847,000,000. You guys got it there? There you go. 6,847,000,000. Okay, so the next one we want to get is their cash flow. We're looking for a cash from operations. What statement again do we need to go to? Play the game with me if you would. What statement? Make sure we're comfortable using the tool. Okay, I'm going to go to that cash flow statement. Again, I've got it here for you. Now, the line I'm looking for is called net cash provided by operating activities. This right here is just reconciling their net income dollar amounts to what's actually cash. Now, if you come to our course, we've got a whole description. Go to our glossary of terms, have somebody walk you through a cash flow statement. You'll get clear on that. Don't have time to explain that now. But how much cash did they generate from their core operation? This is less all their operating expenses, their labor costs, their technology, utilities, all out. This is the cash that's left over. How much did they generate? And remember, their years are a little bit backwards than most statements. Typically, you'd have 2023 right here, and then it'd go descending this way. They flipped it. It's okay. Nobody's going to bust their chops. There you go. 3,884. There's that number. Now, that's positive. That means cash generated. They have 3.8 billion that they can then do whatever the heck they want with that. Big part of what they did is they took some of that money and they bought back shares of stock. They paid down debt. So here's the repurchase of stock. Look at that number right there. Pretty significant. Tax issues they paid, 1.2 billion. You see all these numbers coming out, right? So they spent some decent amount of that 3.8 billion, but they're generating significant. You can see the last 3 years, 2.3 billion, 3.4 billion, up to 3.8 billion. That's the number. Okay, the last one we're going to do is a quick profit one, and then we'll wrap this up here. So profit, again, everybody knows, where do I go on profitability? What statement? There you go. I'm going to my income statement. I'm going to do that for the next 3 numbers, okay? So let's get the revenue. My revenue, like right over here, I jumped to 2023. We'll pick this up a little bit. There's the revenue number. I plug that over. The next line I'm getting is my net income. Again, it's going to be my income statement. I go to that income statement. Want to make sure I'm 2023. Right there, there's net income, 4,708,000,000. Now, by the way, that's significant. Look at how much profit, their IBT, income before taxes, it jumps. How does your income, your profit increase when you're going from, typically your taxes is an expense. Look at this number here. They're 1,989,000,000. They then spend 96 million on taxes. This is their number. Well, they get a big tax credit right here, $2.7 billion. So it makes their profitability even bigger. Now, normally investors, analysts would skew that out. That's a one-time benefit they've gotten. But when we're doing the core calculations, we plug that in. So here's the number. You plug that right in there. You take the 4,792 divided by the 991. That's going to give you net profit margin. You do that calculation, it gives us 48.3%. That is a very high net profit margin. Average S&P 500 for 2023 would probably be about 11.5%. So they're significantly more. Now, remember, they had 2.7 billion of tax benefits. So that's why that looks so strong. Folks, that's how we have the tool. I don't have time to go through it or go through every line item, but here it is, filled out. What do you notice? Well, you look at profitability number. Obviously, that's skewed, but even this profit, without that big growth, 22% net profit margin. They got high margins, folks. It's a very strong margin company. Remember, their cost is a technology that connects suppliers with the consumers. You look at their equity ratio. What does that refer? What portion of their assets do they have legal rights to? Average S&P 500 is probably somewhere low end would be 25%. High end is probably 40%. They're very strong financial position. Return on assets, pretty decent over the last 2 years. Of course, this one's skewed because of the big benefit they've gotten. Now, these numbers are pretty messed up here. Of course, we're dealing with those big growth numbers. Well, not only can you use it to compare one year to another, but you can also compare it against a competitor. So here's Airbnb versus Expedia. You can see their numbers. You can also do it on any company. For those that were with us last month, we looked at GameStop. You can look at their numbers in comparison to get an assessment. But in the end, that's the second tool. Quick question from Jake says, were you able to figure profit margin without the tax benefit? Yeah, the profit margin without tax benefit's about that 23%. It's in fact, you could run it off of the IBT and you'll be close to that, a little bit higher. Take out a normal tax rate. they've had some significant tax issues because remember, they got all these assets all over the world. How do you pay taxes? There's been some legal issues around that. So they're still figuring that out, but still, Jake, it would be around a 20%, which is still pretty good numbers there. Let me know if that answers your question. Well, folks, that leads us to the last step. What do I know now? I know that they've got strong growth emphasis, both on the host and the travel experience. They're going to really focus on their core, but they're also looking at other opportunities to expand their business. Well, then the next goal then, and their financial numbers are great, really strong numbers. So how do I apply this? What do I do with it? The most important thing you can do around any learning experience is to do something with it. Here at Acumen Learning, we had one of our clients, unbeknownst to us, do an assessment. What benefits do they get from our programs? Here's the types of benefits people get. Once you understand business and financial acumen, then you apply it in your functional expertise. You'll improve the performance of your business as well as your function. You'll increase your collaboration across the board, improve upward, how well you communicate with your boss, improve employee engagement. Again, once an employee understands how their role impacts the business, you're going to see success in their role and greater engagement. Increase business focus. If every single person was to take 1 hour a quarter, step back, listen to what our executives are saying, and then go back and execute based upon your strategy, you're going to have huge improvement, improved teamwork. Basically, in the end, business acumen drives engagement, drives results of your employee. So that's what you've got to do. Once you're done with understanding this, you've got to do something with it. To know and not to do is not to know. So the last part of the tool is how do I take this and do something with it? So my key insights, what stood out to me? Significant growth since 2007, 5 million hosts, almost every country, every region across the globe, $1.5 billion in arrival. Benefits from COVID. There's many companies that struggled during COVID, but even in 2021, they started to see growth and cash flow generation for the company because people started to go. Remember, all of a sudden you could work from home. Well, I could go maybe rent a place in a certain area and I could live there for a few weeks or a month and benefit, but I don't want to do that in a hotel. So significant, they really had success out of COVID, much like Amazon did or some of these other groups. And then expansion beyond this core, this idea of going beyond just the travel. And not only the expansion beyond the core for me a little bit, this idea on hosts, I didn't make the connection about the importance of the hosts, which is bad on me. Of course, that makes sense. They're the main providers of the product or service. But to see that growth and that making it a common thing for people to share their assets, I think is a unique model. We're seeing that with cars. We're seeing that with vehicles, bicycles. We're seeing it with homes and stuff. It's interesting to see what the future might hold, and they're looking to play a role in that, particularly around AI. So what do I do with that? How would I do something with that? For me, I'm a consultant. I work with many different companies. To understand this business helps me to see the bigger picture of the economy. So I would compare their performance against their peers and learn more about their industry. I want to look at it also with ride sharing. I want to look at it with all these unique models that have come in the last maybe 10, 15 years. I want to share this information with my consultants, my clients, and new customers. How is this industry impacting the travel industry? How is it impacting various industries and opportunities within the economy? And then finally, if you're with Airbnb, come talk to us. You guys have had rapid growth. I want to help your employees understand how can they really drive to the goals and objectives that you talk about. Your 3 pillars. How do I help them understand your business well enough that they can do that? That's what we do here at Acumen Learning. That would be my goal. So last part of the tool is to have some sort of conversation. If it's your own company, sit down with your manager, share what your insights are. What are the top 3 things you're going to do? If it's a customer or partner, how can I use this information to drive my customers or my partnerships better? And then finally, if it's a competitor, how can I use this information to differentiate our goals and objectives as a business? How can we differentiate ourselves versus VRBO or the hotel space would be how I'd use that. Folks, that's the process. That's the tool. So what happens once you have this tool and you start doing it? Remember, there's 3 goals, things you needed to do in the prepare phase. Well, basically, once you've filled one of these out, all you have to do is bring this tool out, see where they were in Q4. And if you wanted to look at Airbnb in about a month and a half when they close Q2, or Q1, you could quickly pull this up and say, well, this is how they performed in Q4. How are they doing today? So keep these documents as a way to see, are we getting better or not? Well, folks, as we wrap up today, here's my question to you. Put in the chat box, So my challenge to you is to take this. If you say, hey, this was interesting, I can see how I can use it, and you do nothing with it, I've wasted your time. Here in my chat box, I want to hear from you. With this tool, who are you going to go analyze? Is it the company you're going to work for, the company you sell to, compete against, partner with, invest in, interested in, or you know what? I'm going to do it for next month. Next month, we're going to look at Bank of America. At Bank of America on March 21st, we'll look at them. If you want to practice using it, take the tool. We put in the chat box here, the tool. And once you get that tool, go ahead and go look at Bank of America and come ready to talk to us about that as a resource for us. Let's see, do we have that in the tool? Oh, there we go. So we need the webinar tool. Oh, there it is. Okay, right at the top, you see the webinar tool. So click on that webinar tool right here. Let's put it in another time just so it's at the very bottom, the webinar specific tool. Thank you. Make sure we have that. That's the tool that I want you to access the tool itself. In addition to that, we have $100 off our online tool. If you want to get a refresher, or if you're new to this content and you want to be familiar with it, we have a great online program that's a great resource for you. You can get a deeper dive on the concepts we talked about. Well, folks, it's been my pleasure. It looks like I've taken an extra minute of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Please come back next month as we get a chance to look at Bank of America, a bank, very unique model. Learn more about how to assess a bank. Come back and join us. My colleague, Ryan Hunt, will be doing that. Look forward to doing that, and share this with your colleagues. Let's come and join. If you have any questions, we can help you to build your business acumen, build your credibility, build your career, build your company. Please reach out to us. Thank you very much. Have a great day.